Tasmai Shri Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristha Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai. So we did to verse 15 last week. Achyut Radhe Mataji, you want to share a summary of what we did last week?
Yeah, last time we discussed about the realization in the yoga ladder, that of Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and Bhagwan realization. And in that, we discussed how it is connected to the yoga ladder. In Paramatma, Brahman realization, it is kind of a material energy of the Lord. And it is like a person realizes that there is something beyond, and that is something eternal there. So that is Brahman realization. And it is the truthfulness characteristics, as you discussed about it. Also you said that Krishna, whether it's any kind of realization, he is perfect in all aspects. And you also mentioned about that this realization is in Gyan Yoga ladder. And then we also discussed about Paramatma realization, which is Chitta realization, including the Sat Chit aspect. And it is the realization that it is the super soul, which is living in the heart of everyone. And then this is the Dhyan Yoga category of the yoga ladder. And then you discussed about the Bhagwan realization, which is the complete realization in Satchit Anand and bliss form as a personal aspect of the rock. And this is like his spiritual or internal energy that you discussed. And then we also discussed about how we have to offer everything to the Lord, whatever we eat, whatever we perform, whatever austerities we do, offered to the Lord, Vishnu. And then his agents like Indra and Varuna and all, the Lord in the discuss
Your voice is breaking up. We can't hear you.
And we have to offer a share fare, otherwise it is considered to be being thief. We have to offer oblations to them. And we also discussed that like if we are directly offering it to the God, then Krishna, then everyone else receives, all the demigods receive whatever we offer. So these are the pretty much things. And then if we eat anything without offering the Lord, then it is considered as sin.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. That was a good summary. So I'll go alphabetically with all of you so that everybody gets a chance to share. So I started with A. So whoever is next on line A will probably be next. So yes, so we talked about we talked about the ladder, the three types of realizations, and then the cycle that goes on. The subsist on food grains come from rains, rain depend on performance of yajna, sacrifices, and then sacrifices are born of prescribed duties, Vedas, and all is eventually coming from Krishna. So summarizing that all the section that we did was the 16th verse, where Krishna is saying that one who does not follow in the human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. This is the 16th verse. It's kind of summary what we discussed. And in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about the Mammonist philosophy. So work very hard and enjoy sense gratification, which is a very common philosophy nowadays. And it's not new, it's been around for a long time. Charvaka Muni was the one who brought this philosophy about. And his philosophy was Rinam Kritva Gritam Pivet Yavan Jivet Sukham Jivet. You take loan, you beg, borrow, or steal, but you make your food in ghee. As long as you live happily, you live in luxury. That was the philosophy of Charvaka Muni. Prabhupada talks about him quite a lot. So when we live with that philosophy, which is unfortunately very common nowadays, it's a sinful philosophy to live in. It's a life full of sin. Okay? And Prabhupada and Krishna are asking us not to do that. And there's an interesting word that I always get interested is the word sin. Okay, so we know that a similar word is crime, right? So the difference between a crime and sin is, if you look at it from any religious perspective, sin is what is morally wrong, and crime is what is legally wrong. That we just have a definition, right? So where the societies are based on scriptural values, then the sin and crime would be the same to some extent. But in society that is not based on scriptural values, sin might not be a crime, right? For example, abortion is considered a sin in many cases. If you're just using it for enjoyment purposes, and then you're going for it, then it's a sin. But then it's not necessarily a crime. So there is a difference. I just wanted to bring out that this word has a different connotation to it. The word sin in comparison to crime, it's different, right? And another question. I think we talked about this. Yeah. So another thing was that person who follows this principle put forth by Krishna through the Vedas, then that person is actually living in the right consciousness. So normally yajnas are performed for material gains, but then that mantras also have Lord Vishnu mantras in there. That is what leads to purification. That's what the gradual process is from karma kard to bhakti. That is what is signified by Prabhupada. So so that was what we kind of wrapped up last week. So we will go on to verse 17 now. So here the section changes a bit. Let me share my slides. A second. So we had this is the division for the chapter. So first Krishna replies back to Arjun that Arjun was in doubt. The doubt being the equivocal instruction given by Krishna. That's what Arjun asked. Fight or not fight, keep away from the activities. So Krishna tells, do your activities much better. And then Krishna, then he takes a different turn there. He's saying that, okay, for people who cannot do karma yoga, at least practice karma kanda, follow sacrifices according to the Vedas. And then he elaborates upon that you offer everything back to Vishnu. And then comes that, now the part that we're going to begin is that, so Krishna is now giving a different aspect to Arjun, that if you don't do your duty, people who look up to you as a leader will follow you blindfoldedly. So you cannot give up your duty, however elevated you may be, because people are looking up to you. And an example for all of us is Prabhupada. Prabhupada was an Uttam Adhikari. He didn't need to do all what he was doing. He could have lived back in Vrindavan and left his body and gone back home, back to Godhead. But he did, because he wanted to set an example. He would chant his rounds. He was like an acharya. He was walking the talk, so that his disciples could follow him, because they used to see him as a leader. So that is why Krishna is now going to elaborate upon that section, that how being an exemplar is of value for all of us. Okay, so let's go to 17th verse. So we are, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So Krishna is now talking about Atmarati. So the word being used here is Atmarati. So Atmarati is one who takes pleasure in the self. So Atmarati means delighting in the self. Right? We all have experience of delighting in matter. Delighting in matter. So where our consciousness is riveted in material experiences, senses, mind, intellect, different levels of entanglement. So enjoyment of the soul comes from beyond all of that, right? So, for example, once somebody asked Prabhupada, what is your daily schedule look like? Some common that they ask Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, humbly started explaining him. Then we wake up at 3:40. Then we do a Mangal Aarti. Then we have a Tulsi Aarti. Then Bhagavatam class, and then we go out for services the whole day. Preaching, book distribution, and then in the evening we have our evening program, Aarti, and then we rest at 9:30. And then Prabhupada also mentioned that no meat eating, no gambling, etc. So what the person asked Prabhupada was that, so Swamiji, then what do you do for recreation? And Prabhupada looked at him and said, our whole life is like recreation, right? We are going from one meaningful activity to another, so we are enjoying everything. So that is the essence here. So what it is that a person who's Atmarati, he's enjoying within the self, he's delighting within the spiritual self. So, many times people also ask devotees, oh, you don't watch movies, you don't have posters, movie stars in your house, sports star. So don't you get bored? So the essence is that whatever you may do, someone will surely find fault with your work. So you just continue to do your service wholeheartedly and don't worry about what people are saying. So how do you, so understanding that an Atmaratir person is who is delighting within himself and who is doing his spiritual activities with full enjoyment. And that's a person who's Atmaratir. So for such a person, there is no obligation because he's placed on a spiritual platform. So Krishna is starting with the qualities of a Atmaratir, so that a person who's an exemplar. So he's saying that such a person who's taking pleasure in the self, he has no duty. So Krishna is saying that here. And Prabhupada is saying such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuation. So that's a Atmaratir person. Prabhupada is defining the Atmaratir person. Then in the next verse, Krishna says, a self-realized person, man, has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Right? So now Prabhupada tells us that a self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duty, save and accept activities in Krishna consciousness. So now Krishna is again continuing his explanation of an Atmaratir person and what is the inherent nature of an Atmaratir person. There's a story that I really like very much, is about this devotee called Vishnu Chitta. He was a Vaishnava devotee in South India, and he would cultivate gardens and make garlands for deities. And he was very poor. His clothes were always tattered and very thin, skinny guy. And there were a lot of these karmakandi brahmins, a lot of those who were just into no spiritual, just enjoyment, and they're worshipping to different demigods, so on and so forth. So they would criticize him. They would criticize Vishnu Chitta. And they would do that day in, day out, and Vishnu Chitta would just tolerate them. One day, when Vishnu Chitta just thought that I have to tell them, I have to teach them something. So one day he just took one of the Brahmins, the Karma Kandi Brahmins, to the temple of Balaji. Right. So in Balaji, and please correct me, I've never been to Balaji, but if anybody has, there are three deities, right? Of Shri Devi, Bhu Devi, and Neela Devi. And they are the Jnana Bala Kriya potency of the Lord. Jnana Bala Kriya. Yes, Shri Devi, Bhu Devi, Neela Devi. Yes, so that's the potency of Shakti of the Lord. And so he took the Karmikandi to the deities, to Shri Devi, and there he started singing the Shri Sukta there. It's a wonderful set of prayers to give towards Mother Lakshmi. And he was singing with such a sweet voice and with such intensity and sincerity that gold coins started pouring from the sky in the temple. And within a few minutes, the whole temple hall was filled with gold coins. So Vishnu Chitta turned towards the Karmakandi Brahman and said, take whatever you want and get lost. I'm sure, no, he didn't say get lost, but he said, take whatever you want and you leave. So that made the Karmakandi Brahmana realize that how devotees of Vishnu have everything at their disposal. But all they want is to serve the Lord. Right? Narayana Parasarve na kutasya na vipyati. Swarga apavarga narkeshu tulyartha pidarshina. In the 6th chapter, 76th canto, 17th chapter, there is a verse Lord Shiva says that Narayana Parasarve na kutasya na vipyati. That for devotees of Narayan, Swarga apavarga narkeshu. That Swarga or narkeshu, narka, is the same. It doesn't matter to the devotees. For them, it's everything, because all they want to do is serve the Lord, and they can do that anywhere. So understanding that for a self-realized person, going back to this, a self-realized person, for him there is no duty. Okay, he does not have to depend on anyone. So he's so much self-satisfied in whatever he has in his service or in his or her service that he doesn't need anything else. But that doesn't mean that the devotees of Lord are poor or they don't have anything. It just means that they don't want it. Just like Sudama Brahman. He didn't want anything. He just went to meet Krishna. Krishna just could understand what's going on in his life, and Krishna gave him everything. So that's the way a pure Vaishnava, Krishna Bhaktas have their lives, live their lives. Okay. So now 19th one. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Prabhupada is saying, a person therefore acting for Krishna or in Krishna consciousness under proper guidance and without attachment to the result of the work is certainly making progress toward the supreme goal of life. Prabhupada is highlighting a couple of things here. Proper guidance, guidance of a teacher, a senior, of a devotee of Lord Krishna, without attachment to the result of the work. Karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So, and such a person makes progress towards the supreme goal of life. So again, Krishna is just continuing on elaborating that what those people are who are Atmarati. So now the word here Krishna is using in here is tasmad. So the word tasmad means therefore. So whenever the word therefore comes means Krishna. In general, also in English language, whenever you put the word therefore, it means that you have already built a scenario before that, a case. So you built a case before that word tasmad comes into it. Similarly for Krishna, whenever Krishna uses the word tasmad, therefore, it means that he has built a scenario. So the scenario that Krishna has built is that Atmarati doesn't have any work to perform and he has no obligations to material work. But what Krishna is saying in this verse is that one should act as a matter of duty. So that person continues to act as a matter of duty. So the scenario built was no obligation to material world, but what is Krishna still mentioning? That you should continue to work. So yes, Prabhu. Prabhu, you raised your hand. Your hand is want to say something?
Prabhuji, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Prabhuji, you mentioned Sudama ji, you cited the example that he does not have any intention. But maybe I just misheard or misread. It's always Sudama ji wife, she sent him to get some money or something so the Riddhika will go away. And while returning back, he thought these just he gave some rice or something he did not give the money or something like that. So he was keep contemplating throughout his way back home that I went to the Krishna and I did not get anything but eventually Krishna gave him everything when he reaches near to the house. So he had some what I'm trying to say, that he had something desire in his mind, not he just go pure love. Of course he is like a pure devotee. That's the first question. Second question, Prabhuji, you mentioned that
let's address one at a time, Prabhu. Is it okay?
Yeah, okay. Yep.
So your first part, you are saying that Sudama had some desire. So you rightly said, Prabhu, Sudama's wife had a desire, not Sudama. And even when Sudama reached to Krishna's palace, he didn't ask for anything. And when he was coming back, he was just happy to meet Krishna. So yes, his wife had the desire, but Sudama himself didn't have any desire for any riches. So there's a slight distinction. That's why Sudama is we're not saying that Sudama's wife was a pure devotee, but Sudama was surely a pure devotee and he didn't want anything in return from Krishna. Even though he knew that Krishna was very rich and famous, but he never went with that desire. He just went to meet Krishna. And actually when he saw Krishna, he didn't want to give the gift that he had bought, which was just some chipped rice that he had bought with him. So yes, Sudama didn't have any desires, but his wife did. So I just want to make a distinction.
Yeah, Prabhuji, is it not just an interpretation? We can say Sudama does not have the desire. If does not have the desire, nobody can send him to Krishna. He could have said no to his wife. So now wife has become the culprit basically. Hey, she was a greedy. I mean, I'm just thinking that it's just a matter of how we want to contemplate, actually, how we want to create the story or narrative, isn't it?
Well, we don't create it, Prabhu. That's all coming from Shastra. We don't create that. It's not a narrative that we create. It's something coming from Shastra. That's why we always rely upon Shastra. We don't rely on our contemplation or speculation. So what I am mentioning to you is coming from Shastra. It's not something that any contemplation is there.
All right, yeah. Thank you so much,
Prabhu. But then again, Prabhu, it's a family person. We all know, wife or husband, they cannot live individually. You can just not say that, okay, this is the way I live, you do whatever you feel like. That doesn't never happen, right? If your wife keeps on telling you something, then eventually the husband will agree, that even though if he doesn't want it, and vice versa. Not just saying about husbands, but in general, right? That's all about married life. But in an overall scenario, he was a pure party.
I see. Yep.
Yes, Prabhu. And your second part, Prabhu, you had something.
Yeah, Prabhuji, second part is you mentioned that we need to just Prabhupada mentioned that we need to just I'm happy. What do you do for the entertainment and all? Just question comes in my mind, it's not about the entertainment. If today's world, if somebody is not listening the news, somebody is not reading some other than the shastras or all these things, how that person can be well-rounded and can speak about convincingly, even if you see a lot of our ISKCON devotees, they talk about Mark Twain, they just cite some certain example which are contemporary example. So it means they are doing besides their Sastra Dhyan, they look some other things also. So please help me understanding, like, what does that mean? Like, should we totally, like, it does not mean when Srila Prabhupada mentioned that, okay, like, I just do, like, just prayer and all these things, chanting and all. So basically, he's not saying that. He's just saying, like, keep your eyes open, like, gather all the information, get your knowledge well-rounded. Am I right, or am I misunderstanding here?
So Prabhu, the philosophy should be, you can use everything for Krishna's service, nothing for yourself. That is the principle you should always keep in mind. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when we come to Nectar of Devotion, there is a verse in Nectar of Devotion which clearly says that Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatharam Upayunjita Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhi Yuktam Vairagya Uchyate. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. We see everything in relationship to Krishna, and that is the true renunciation. If you feel that by reading newspapers you can influence people to come to bhakti, please read them. But always remember that there is a very fine line between where Maya fools us and where we do bhakti. There's a very thin line between that.
Right.
You can convince yourself that reading newspapers, going to movies, watching TV, I'm going to use all that for Krishna's service. And one day you will be so much in the karmic bondage that you will just forget about your services, about Krishna. So it's just, remember that distinction has to be there. So Prabhupada is not saying give up everything. Prabhupada is saying use everything for Krishna's service.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
And you rightly put it, Prabhu. All these devotees, they quote these big, you mentioned Mark Twain. I know so many teachers, so many spiritual masters, they quote many news also, current news scenario, but they use all that for enlightening themselves, for self-realization, for helping others to something. So for example, when this COVID hit, right? So many people thought that, okay, COVID is coming and now how are we going to do bhakti? It's very demoralizing for many people. But then many devotees figured out that how they could preach through many other methods which they had never explored earlier. So then people started using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and so on. So many things came up. So people got more and more involved in technology, but not for their own gratification, for the service of Krishna. And that is all okay. Use everything. But as I said, always remember there's a very thin line. If I am not smart enough, if I am not sincere enough, Maya can easily pull me on their side. Maya is waiting every second just to tell me, see, I told you, spirituality is not meant for you. It's a different class of people. You come back here. You watch TV, you read news, you do all that. So Maya is always looking for a chance. So don't give Maya that chance. Use everything for Krishna's service. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. And that's what the whole bhakti process is about. Right? When you do all your prescribed duties in a devotional mood, that will lead one to gradually develop attraction to Krishna. That attitude will purify us. Prabhupada had billions of dollars, not billions, probably millions of dollars passed through his hands. He was riding in costly cars, and people were gifting him gold chains and rings and so on and so forth. He was rich, but he never used even a farthing for himself. He put everything for Krishna's service. Right? His disciples would, publish books. They were using the latest technology for printing, publishing. So, as devotees, we are not averse to anything, right? But then, if something scrambles my brain, I have to be cautious about it. I don't want to go that route. So there, I take a step back, and that's what Prabhupada is telling us. That's what Krishna is mentioning in the purport. So Krishna is even saying that sometimes, as a matter of duty, you have to act because people are looking up to you, right? So that's what Krishna is saying in these verses. and we'll talk more about that. How can we be a exemplary person? So, and that's again a very thought process, that if I don't talk about news or I don't talk about sports, I will be left out of the whole picture. That's also a presumption to some extent. If there is a news that is something you have to know about, I assure you, you will know about it some way or the other. Somebody will come and tell you, somebody will come and either message you, or you see it somewhere or the other, you know about it. So it's not something that as if that you're not reading the newspaper, you're missing out on something huge. There's nothing of that sort. Okay, so we did this verse. Which one is this? 19th. Okay. 20. And so in 20, Krishna gives examples. Okay, now Krishna has come to give an example here. So he's saying kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just say, for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. So what Krishna is saying, that there's a difference between a formal leadership and there is a difference, and what would be a moral leadership, as you can say. So what Krishna is saying, that just by doing the prescribed duties, King Janaka became famous. Let's take an example. In India, Jawaharlal Nehru was a formal leader, right? In India, he was the Prime Minister of India, the first Prime Minister of free India. Mahatma Gandhi didn't have any official leadership, but he had immense moral leadership. Even the formal leaders such as Nehru were following him. Right? The whole country was following Mahatma Gandhi. Right? So we cannot forcefully make someone follow us. We cannot borrow fellowship or followership based on social or official positions. So we as devotees, we are moving towards a moral platform, which comes only from service, and especially menial service, right? So the question that Arjun probably has in his mind is that how to be Atmaratir and still fight, right? And he's thinking in his mind, can you give me some examples, Krishna? So Krishna is giving the example of Janaka. So Janaka, as many of you might already know, Janaka is the father of Mother Sita. He ruled on Mithila. Mithila is in Nepal now. Yes, in Nepal now. So he's been given as an example, and he's one of the 12 Mahajans given in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. There are 12 Mahajans. So Mahajan is somebody who's expert in spiritual knowledge. So that person is Mahajan. Bhishma was one of the Mahajans, right? So say Swayambur Narada Shambhu, Swayambhu Narada Shambhu, Kumara Kapilo Muni. And then it says Prahlado Janako Bhishma. So these were the Balir Vyavasayik, Balir, Vyasa, and Dvayam. 12 in total. It comes in the 6th chapter. 12 people in total who are considered that. So he was one of them. And so Krishna is giving his example. So by appearing in Lord Janaka's family, in King Janaka's family, Mother Sita ensured that King Janaka would be famous forever. So by loving his daughter and by showing his unmatched love towards her, he found the highest auspiciousness, right? So also when we go out for book distribution, our quintessential principle is that we leave everyone with a good impression. One mistake on my part can leave a bad impression for ISKCON as an organization. So similarly, leadership is of immense value, and people are always looking at leaders very closely. You can see this, even in the political world, in the material world, we see that. So what Krishna is asking Arjun to do is that even though you might be self-realized, you might be Atmaratir, but still you cannot give up doing your duty. The reason being, because everybody is looking up to you for doing his or her duty. That is what Krishna is telling. Although one who is situated in Krishna consciousness may not have any interest in the world, he still works to teach the public how to live and how to act. Experienced persons in Krishna consciousness can act in such a way that others will follow. And this is explained in the following verse. So that is being mentioned here now, that Krishna is asking that you have to be an exemplar. Don't give up your duties. So if you understand, like, somebody, let me see. So somebody asks you, what is the message of Bhagavad Gita? Right? So the message of Bhagavad Gita can be explained by 3 Ds. 3D. It's dutiful, detached, and devotional. Right? Dutiful, detached, and devotional. And dutiful is the first part that Krishna is explaining right now to Arjuna. And so Krishna is asking Arjuna that be thoughtful, okay, and also try to see what Krishna wants, right? We can always say, okay, yeah, it's okay, I know what to do, but that's not important. Important part is that what Krishna wants us to do, right? That is the important aspect. And here, so Krishna is explaining, Arjuna, that that you have to, continue working as you are dutifully, so that people can look up to you and continue doing their duty. That's the important message coming out of it. So we did 21. 21 is the famous verse. Yad yad acharati shreshthas tad evataro jana sayad pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So, this is a leadership sutra coming from Bhagavad Gita. We should realize that people always watch us with a telescope and a microscope. So, telescope for things you do externally. They look at it, from a telescope. You're looking at a far off object. It's very small. The people don't pay a lot of focus on what you do externally, but what we do in private or what we do away from the society, that people look as under a microscope. They enlarge it to a great extent. And that is the way this world works. That is why Krishna is saying that everything is an exemplar, so that all the world who's looking at you with a microscope doesn't get bewildered. So if you realize that atheism, right? Atheism, when said somebody's atheistic. So why do people become atheists? It's not predominantly because of a disbelief in God, but it's because of they are disgusted by people who cheated them on the name of religion. That is why the people become atheists. Or they become atheists when they see that everything is just such a hodgepodge. People have made a mess out of it. So people, as they say in a material world, that people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. So leaders, so it's this individual person, people who look up to. So like, for example, Lord Ram was one such exemplar. He was a leader, how you should live your life. And he propagated such leadership values. And he was a moral leader. So everybody would follow him. As we know, the story goes that the entire Ayodhya was following him to the forest. Right? His own brothers, even when Lord Ram was away for 14 years, his own brothers didn't beget any children. Just because if they would have begot children and Lord Ram didn't have any children, then how will Lord Ram's children become king? So they were such deep leadership values instilled in them that they didn't beget any children. So when Lord Ram came back, and then Lord Ram and Sita had love and Kush, and then that was the way they thought that the kingdom would move forward. But then the other 3 brothers, didn't beget any children till Lord Ram came back from his exile. And so Lord Chaitanya is also saying this here, that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. Apani Acharya Prabhu Jivera Sikhaye. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says this in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Apani Acharya Prabhu Jivera Sikhaye. Apani Acharya, by your own activities, Jivera Sikhaye. You teach everybody else. There's a famous quote which is ascribed to Saint Francis of Assisi. I'm not sure if he said it or not, but many people assign to him. He says that preach the gospel all the times and sometimes also speak, he said. So, yeah, you can preach the gospel all the time, but sometimes you can also speak. So his message was that preach by your own activities, by your own way of living. So, and then Prabhupada towards the end is saying that all such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. As a leader, it's the responsibility of all of us to be conversant with these standard books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So you should congratulate yourself for reading these books scrutinizingly, going through all of them, because until we don't have that, we're not conversant with these books, we can give many of our own thoughts, but the weightage to those thoughts come when we refer to the Shastras. So whenever we speak with Shastras as the backbone. Then nobody can question us. Then we will be naturally we'll be leaders. So we should be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. That's what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada also says one thing here about Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, following the leaders. So he's saying the Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footstep of great devotees. And that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. That's the path of spiritual realization. Just by following a pure soul, we will get liberation. Right? That's what Prabhupada is stressing upon here. That comes in the first canto, second chapter of where it said that Bejiriya Munyo Thagre Bhagavanta Madhokshajam. That by following those souls, by following those great authorities, one becomes eligible for liberation from material. I don't have to be perfect. But if I hold the hand of somebody who's perfect, that person can take me through. And that is why in many places in Bhagavatam, most of the personalities, they say that, consider me as a child and hold my hand and take me wherever you want. Yatha charit bala hitam pita swayam. Just like a father, out of care and concern for his child, holds the child's hand, bala hitam, for the child's welfare, he takes it with him. So similarly, many personalities like Prithu Maharaj, they request the Lord that please, let me, I don't know anything. I'm a fool, like a child. So you please hold my hand and take me to my destiny. So, two couple of important points coming out here. Following the footsteps of great souls. And then secondly, being conversant with the standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Okay. So, we are 22. Okay. Then coming to now, so Krishna, now somebody would say to Krishna, somebody can ask him that, right? Or you are saying all these fancy words, but do you yourself actually follow this? So somebody can question that. That was. So now Krishna is what he's going to say is, Name Parthasti Kartavyam, that there is no duty for me, there is no work prescribed for me, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So the way this section is moving, the trajectory of this section is highlighting the importance of doing your duty. So Krishna is he's talking about karma yoga, and then he briefly alluded to jnana yoga in the 17th, 18th verse. He briefly referred to that. But then again, he restates the gravity, the significance of doing your duty. And how does he restate that gravity? Is by his own example. So Krishna here again, he's presenting himself as a self-realized person. He's not revealing himself as Supreme Lord yet. So, but then if you can indirectly understand that why is there no duty for Krishna? Because he's the Supreme Lord. So even though he's not directly revealing it, but indirectly he's revealing that I am the Supreme Lord and there's no duty for him. So then this purport, Prabhupada quotes a couple of verses or something. Sorry, I'm looking for something. Okay, so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th, sorry, the 10th canto, where Narada Muni goes to Dwarka to meet Krishna. Okay. So what happens is that when Narada Muni enters Dwarka, and as we all know that Krishna had 16,108 wives. Krishna had a beautiful palace for each and every single wife. Okay? And there Narada Muni realizes how exemplar Krishna himself is. Okay? He goes to one palace, he sees that Krishna is playing with his children. He goes to another palace, he sees that Krishna is discussing politics with his ministers. He goes to another one, he is sitting and having lunch with his family members. And somewhere he is sitting with his wife. And all. So he sees that Krishna exemplary, he's living his life as a perfect exemplar. So that's it's the conversation of Bhagavad. For us as devotees and practicing devotees, this is more than enough. We don't need Krishna to prove himself to us that he's exemplar. For us, he is exemplar. But many a times people can ask you a question, people can ask me a question that Krishna does so many leelas that appear immoral, right? For example, Rasa Leela. So somebody can ask you, why did Krishna perform Rasa Leela if he's an exemplar? Okay? And the way to answer that question is that to understand that Krishna, there are two perspectives you can understand and answer this question. When Krishna was a king in Dwarka, there he was living a life of an exemplar. Okay? But in Vrindavan, he was not a leader. Okay? He was not living a life of a leadership. He was not in a leadership position. He was just a child there. So, but does that mean that his examples in Vrindavan are not exemplary? So to understand that is that Krishna demonstrates and also transcends morality. The purpose of morality is only to check our selfish desires. The reason Krishna created morality in this world is so that I don't let my selfish desires go haywire. My senses go wild. Okay? So we need to protect ourselves from our own selfish desires. And that is why we need morals. Right? But Krishna does not need morals. Morality is like a lamp. Okay, just like a lamp. If I am in a dark place and I cannot see anything, if someone gives me a lamp, so-called lamp, analogically morality, I am able to figure my way out. But if the sun rises, I don't need the lamp anymore. Sun is a much higher illumination. So lamp is like the moral principles, and Krishna is like the sun. So if we have Krishna in our life, then whatever we will do will be moral. But if till we don't have that, we have to follow the path of morality so that our selfish desires don't get the better of us. So first we have to understand the position of a person and then look at his or her action. So when Britishers came to India and they saw that we pray to a god who steals butter, They were intellectually short-circuited. They were mentally, their intelligence was fried. They couldn't conceptualize and understand, because they didn't understand the position of Krishna in that world, in India. That is why they thought of systematically breaking our spiritual backbone, and so they couldn't understand it. But as devotees, or as practicing devotees, we understand Krishna. We understand that he is beyond morality. So there is moral, there is immoral, and there is something that is transmoral. Okay. So we have to understand that Krishna is beyond morality. So that's one aspect of looking at. The second aspect of looking at, if somebody asks that, oh, Krishna was immoral in doing Ras Leela. Krishna, when he did Ras Leela, he's demonstrating the topmost spirituality. Okay, so you have to understand that he's demonstrating topmost spirituality, because it was demonstrated for the sake of love. For the sake of love, Krishna gives up every morality. He sacrifices everything. And that's the message he gives us. Sarv dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Forget everything. Krishna is saying, Sarv dharman, give up everything, and you do come and surrender to me. Right? That is what we should focus on when we look at the Ras Leela. When we know Krishna in truth, janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vekti tatvata tapta deha punarjanma naiti mameti swarjan. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vekti tatvata. Who knows Krishna in truth? This comes in the 4th chapter. This is the 4.9. We know, then we will know which activity represents what about Krishna. Right? And then so we have to understand that. And so all the people whom Krishna was enjoying with, having pastimes, they were all like his shadows, just like a small child, right? When he sees the light, and then with his hands, he can make many different images, like of a bird or a dog, or with his hands. So does that mean that it's immoral to do that? No. So similarly, Krishna is just playing with his shadows. All the living entities, all the gopis who were in the Ras Leela, they were like his shadows. So it's not immoral. But to explain to others, this is something you will have to understand, because this question comes very often. People have been degraded to such an extent that they don't even leave Krishna alone. So if someone asks you, you should have this answer in hand, that how you can explain Krishna's so-called immoral behavior. Okay. Any thoughts on this? I'll take a pause here. Nothing? Everybody understood the concept of how Krishna is not immoral but transmoral?
This is complicated, Prabhuji. It's like, hard to understand until we read multiple times.
Yes,
so I'm kind of confused, actually. Like, the more you are explaining, more I'm getting confused. I need to go through one more time. So, but it makes sense. But when we start using, like, different ways, so it's like it gets confusing, like, very quickly. So
yes, and confusion is a sign of intelligence, because once you get confused, then you look for answers. So being confused is not always bad. But these concepts you have to understand. There is no way out of it. There are so many things in Bhagavad Gita. If we don't understand and we are out there and somebody's talking to us, we'll not be able to convince others about it.
Yeah.
Something we have to understand.
Yeah, ultimately, Prabhuji, it boils down to the faith, actually. Like, no matter if somebody does not have a faith, no matter how much argument you do, how much, evidence you provide, like, it's not going to change anything. I mean, I may be wrong, but I never saw, like, if somebody doesn't have the faith, or somebody is going with a totally different thought process, no matter whatever the evidence you bring, people will be in the denial stage.
Yeah.
And, so ideally, like, you are just preaching the choir kind of thing.
Yes, you're right, Prabhu. And Krishna will say this in the 26th verse when we come there. He says, Na buddhi bhedam janyet jnanam karma sanginam. So he's saying, Na buddhi bhedam janyet jnanam karma sanginam. That don't try to even teach this to ignorant people. Don't go that route. Just try to engage them in some service, and slowly and steadily they will be purified. So this is not something you explain to people who have no faith. For them,
Right.
either you give some prasadam to them, you can give them a book and say, okay, try reading it, but don't try to explain philosophy to them. They will never understand it. And these philosophies like Ras Leela and all these, they are meant only for practicing devotees, stable, practicing, who have faith on Krishna. They will only understand. Others cannot understand. We don't even tell the other people. Right? That is one of the 10 offenses in that we discussed. That one of the offenses was that not to tell the glories of these scriptures and of Krishna to people who don't believe. So what that meant is that somebody who does not believe, don't tell them these high esoteric philosophies. For them, just keep it very simple and try to give them some prasadam, bring them slowly. So whatever we do in Bhakti Shastri is primarily for strengthening our intelligence and for making us Sudrida Manas, making our mind and intelligence stronger so that we can practice Bhakti despite all that is coming our way. Okay, anything else on anyone's mind? I know it was confusing. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Any thoughts?
Well, I do not have any question, Prabhu, but I just would like to reflect that the way you explained today this aspect of Krishna being immoral, it was really, really very good, actually. And we can understand very well that Krishna, first thing we have to know that he is beyond any mundane morality. And when he, as you said, that when he's doing this Rasa Leela, he's performing the highest form of spirituality, which is like mark of love and total surrender. And we see that manifested in the form of all the gopis who come leaving all their families behind, and they are just totally devoted to Krishna and ready to sacrifice anything. So that we learn from that Leela. And also you very nicely put this up that Krishna is simply playing with his shadows. And we can relate to that yes, since we are being part and parcel of Krishna, we are just his shadows. And he created all this material world for his enjoyment. So he's kind of doing that enjoyment. At the same time, he's teaching so many things to us in return. So that is just a reflection on that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the reflection. Yes, it's a probably a slightly convoluted concept, but yes, you very rightly explained it. Thank you for rephrasing it. Yes, Krishna is, as I said, all these moral principles are for us to guard us from our lower selfish desires. And out of those lower selfish desires, we hurt others. So therefore, we need moral protection. But when Krishna acts, he's not bound by any lower desires. He doesn't have any lower desires. He's every time acting for the well-being of human race. That is why a good affirmation to have in your day-to-day, everyday life, I might have said this to you in the past also, that always have a set of affirmations which you can read every day. When you read the same thing again and again every day, it comes down to your subconscious. So one affirmation that I have on my refrigerator is that whatever is happening to you is Krishna's benevolent plan to bring you closer to his lotus feet. So understand that Krishna is only acting for welfare of human race, nothing else. Right? So Krishna is always looking for reciprocation from his devotees, because Krishna has everything except one thing, which only his devotees have. What is it? Can anybody think about that? You already might know about it. What is that one thing that Krishna does not have and his devotees have? And for that reason, he comes also as one of the avatars.
Is it like to reciprocate the love exchange between Krishna and the devotee?
Yes, Mati. Yeah. Somebody else was also saying something.
I thought, Prabhuji, the devotional service that we do perform for Lord Krishna.
Yeah, the devotional service we are doing is out of love. Yes, you're rightly saying devotional service. So it's out of love for Krishna. So Krishna has everything except the devotee. Which devotee has an extra thing is love for Krishna. And Krishna is so puzzled that what is it that these guys are enjoying that they don't want anything from me? What is it that they're enjoying? That is why he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, first chapter, we are told of 3 reasons for which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to this planet. And one of the reasons being is that to taste the love that his devotees are having for him. That is why he himself comes as a devotee. So yes, so that's the only thing that Krishna does not have. So Krishna, understand Krishna as an embodiment of love. Okay, so he's always acting for my welfare, for my well-being. But then unfortunately, I don't realize it. You know, I hear this story. There's a story which my spiritual master tells that how once a bird flew into his house, and so he kept on opening doors to let the bird go out. But the bird kept flying from one room to another, to another, to another, and then eventually, when the bird got a chance to go out, the bird looked at my spiritual master, and he said that I felt as if the bird was saying to me that, see, you are trying to kill me, but I am escaping. It's the same exactly I feel in my life. Krishna, you're trying to put me through hell, you're trying to kill me, but see, I protected myself, I say. But on the contrary, Krishna is always trying to help. He's always trying to do my welfare. But I don't understand it. I don't realize it. So that's something that we have to realize. Once I have that faith in my heart, that whatever Krishna is doing is for my welfare, all your fear will go away. All your expectations from this world will go away. You know, somebody a couple of days ago, somebody was asking me that, how do you know how much to do? You know, or how much to do to somebody? Like somebody was trying to understand the extent. How do you set limitation? And my simple answer to that person was that you do it when you don't have expectations. When you are unconditionally loving somebody, you don't expect anything in return. And that is the true level of love. And gopis are an embodiment of that. Right? So that's and Krishna, to an extent, it comes to an extent where Krishna says that I don't have anything to repay to you. Gopis, Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, that you have surrendered everything to me. So always remember this part, that Krishna is always acting for our welfare. I may or may not understand it, but that's only what's on Krishna's mind. So just like you have your children's photo on your refrigerator, Krishna has your photo on his refrigerator. And he's waiting for you to come back home. And sometimes he cries for you also. So please plan to go back within this life. So we did 22, we did 23. Let's do 23.
Prabhuji, just one thing that I wanted to, because you mentioned about the 3 Ds of the Bhagavad Gita. So I got the 2, devotion and dutifulness. What is the 3rd D of?
The 3rd D is detached.
Detachment?
Yes, detached.
Okay.
That is the message of Bhagavad Gita. If somebody asks you, tell him, give me a summary of Bhagavad Gita, you can tell these 3 words, which encompasses everything given in Bhagavad Gita. And there's a story, it might be a long one, we're at 8:07. Let me see, I'll try to. So, very good story. There was once this very land far, far away. There used to live this merchant, a zamindar. If you all know what a zamindar is, a landlord. You know, he's a landlord. It's a very affluent person, very rich, and he has an unlimited number of farms producing tons of grains and so on and so forth. When this landlord was growing old, he wanted to hand over the reins of his business to his children. Okay, so he devised a plan, an interesting test. to find out who is qualified to handle which aspect of his business. Okay, he called his 4 daughter-in-laws, and one day he was sitting with many of the other elderly men in the society, and he called his 4 daughter-in-laws, and to each daughter-in-law he gave 5 grains. So 5 pieces of grains, 5 individual grains, and then he said that keep these, and I'll take them from you 5 years from now. Okay, so preserve these grains. Okay, so the first one thought, oh, he's gone senile. Buddha Satya, as they say in Hindi. So he's gone senile. So she was disrespectful and didn't respect her father-in-law. She threw away the grains. Second one also thought similar. The father is gone, my father-in-law is gone senile, he's gone old. But then she didn't throw the grains, she ate them. Okay. Third one, she took it a bit seriously. So she tied those grains in a piece of cloth and hid it behind her altar. Said, whenever my father-in-law asks for it, I'll give it to him. Okay. The fourth one, the fourth daughter-in-law, she was very smart. Okay. So she decided that what's the use of just preserving these? Why not use this for a good purpose? So what she did was she planted them in the ground. And that yielded a lot more grains, and then out of those grains she collected more, and then she planted those, and soon it was a huge yield. Okay, so 5 years passed. The landlord calls all his 5 daughter-in-laws, and he says, "Okay, where are the grains I gave you?" So the first and second were suddenly dumbfounded. They said, "Oh, we never thought that he was going to ask." So they suddenly, just ran around, found 5 grains and gave it to him. And the Zamindar immediately recognized them. He scolded them. He said, "No, these are not the original ones. You're trying to fool me." But the third one said, "No, this is the original one. I had kept it." And then, so the Zamindar said, "Okay." When it came to the fourth daughter-in-law, the Zamindar said, so she said to the Zamindar, "I will need 5 trucks to bring back your 5 grains." And the Zamindar was surprised. The landlord said, "What do you mean you need 5 trucks?" She said, "Give me, I'll tell you." So she brought back 5 trucks loaded with grains, which she had generated in those 5 years. So the Zamindar was very happy. And then eventually he understood to which daughter-in-law should he give the work, what work. So the first daughter-in-law, who was extremely careless, who just was not respectful either, he said she's going to clean the house and do other menial jobs in the house. Second one, who ate it, he said she will be the cook. Okay. So, and the third one, who very nicely kept those grains, she will manage the finances because she knew how to keep things properly. But the fourth one was the most important one, and she will become the leader of the household. So Zamindar told her, the landlord told her, "You take care of the house, keep people happy." The first thing, keep them bonded together in love and a meaningful engagement. So he said that. So he said, happy, bonded, and meaningful engagement. Keep these 3 things. So if you are a leader, you have to keep people happy. You have to keep them bonded in affectionate love, and keep them meaningfully engaged. Okay, no one should be a freeloader. So how does Bhagavad Gita come out of this story? One thing, we should give people service according to their internal disposition, their subhava and talent. And that Krishna will talk about, as I was mentioning, that na buddhi vidam chanye. Okay. The first two of the daughter-in-laws, they were not thoughtful or faithful to their father-in-law. Okay. The third was faithful but not thoughtful. She just kept that aside. She didn't even think about it. But the fourth one was both. She was faithful and thoughtful. So those 5 grains are like instructions received from a spiritual master. Some people might disregard them. Some people might accept them as they are and just follow the instruction, not putting a lot of your own thought. But some people take it far beyond and they flourish. They extend it, they just take it far beyond. So the fourth daughter-in-law had devotion to father. Okay. So the difference between the third and fourth was very simple, devotion. Okay. So that's what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us, devotional attitude. Okay. So dutiful, detached, and devotional. So it's not just you don't surrender your intelligence to Krishna, you surrender with intelligence. You use your intelligence. So yes, being dutiful is good, but dutiful and detached is also good. But then both of them will have very little effect if there is no devotion. Okay. So that's one story. So yes, that's the message coming from Bhagavad Gita. Be dutiful, detached, and devotional. And if you want to look at it from another analogy, Krishna, those 5 grains represent 5 gifts that Krishna gave us. Okay. So first gift he gives us is his body, the intelligence, mind, and body. Then he gives us a lot of material resources. Then thirdly, he gives us relationships, family, friends. Then he gives us responsibilities, services, so on and so forth. And lastly, he gives us spiritual assets. What are the spiritual assets Krishna gives us? Devotee association, spiritual master, scriptures, prasadam, temple, deities. He gives us all. Okay. So we all are very rich. Don't cry that we don't have enough. Krishna has given us 5 gifts. And just like the father-in-law after 5 years asked his daughter-in-laws about those 5 gifts, when we go back home, back to Godhead, Krishna is going to ask us about those 5 gifts he gave us. Abhīṣṭa-dohaṁ, what did you do with those 5 gifts I gave you? Did you treat other people nicely? Did you treat a relationship nicely? Did you use the material resources properly, not misusing them for your personal satisfaction? Did you use your body properly? Did you keep it fit? That because it's not yours, it's the property of my spiritual master. Did I keep it properly? Did I use the spiritual assets properly? So yeah, that was a story that I just wanted to. So Krishna is going to ask us all. So be ready to answer what are we doing with those 5 gifts. Right? Don't be ignorant like the first daughter-in-law. Don't throw away the gifts Krishna is giving. Don't be in passion either, like the second one, looking for instant gratification. What should I do with this grains? Let me eat them, let me eat them. And you can be, don't be also like the third one. The third one was in goodness, third daughter-in-law, which is but very material again. You be good, you live good, do good to others, but don't bring God in pictures. That kind of philosophy. So that's also not good. So those are like honest things. Takes God property, but want to enjoy it. Honestly, kind of. But the fourth daughter-in-law, it represents Shuddha Sattva. What can I do with these grains that will please my spiritual master? What can I do with those 5 gifts Krishna has given me that will please Krishna? So hope you all understood the moral of the story I was trying to explain. Sorry, I took a long detour with this story to tell the answer that there are 3 Ds: beautiful, detached, and devotional, which are exemplified by the story. Okay, I will do a couple of more verses. Before that, I'll see if answer the question. Everything is clear. Okay. Let's do the 23rd verse. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Very important verse again, right? That if I don't do my duties, people will follow my path. That's so now this is an argument that Arjun, Arjun gives in the first chapter. He talks about Varna Shankara. He says that how so Krishna is turning around Arjun's 4th argument of Varna Shankara, that if there are no elderly in the society, then all the remaining younger generation that is coming, they will grow up confused and have no morals. But here Krishna is completely turning around Arjun's that philosophy. And he's saying that if I am not there, then people will lose. So what Krishna is telling Arjun, if you don't listen to me, then actually Varna Shankara will happen. not by listening to, by not listening to me, Varnashankara will happen. Okay? So that's something Krishna is saying. So one thing that you will see in here that I highlighted here, Krishna is saying that all men would follow my path. So somebody can ask us that, how is everybody following Krishna's path? What does that mean? So what that means is that we talked about the whole ladder, right? Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma, Dhyana Jnana, Karma Bhakti Yoga. So the ladder is only one path, but it's up to us which direction we move into. Okay, that is why it is one path. So everybody in this creation is moving on that path, but then they may or might not see a connection to Krishna, and accordingly they might be moving towards Krishna or away from Krishna. So the path is same. Okay, but it's as Krishna is saying, my path. So the path is same, but the direction could be different. Right? So mama vartamanu vartante, the Sanskrit part is mama vartamanu vartante. Everybody would follow my path. So how is everybody following Krishna's path? Is that path is one, but on the ladder you could be going down away from Krishna, or you could be going closer to Krishna. So that's the way to understand that part. So prescribed duties. So prescribed duties. Krishna is mentioning the word prescribed duties. So what is prescribed duty? So as souls, as living entities, we are by nature active. We cannot give up activity. That's Krishna is explaining this. We have to do something. Okay. So at spiritual level, at a spiritual level, we have a right to love Krishna. So that's our true position. Love to Krishna. At material level, Krishna provides us with these by different means of getting happiness, so that we may eventually be liberated from this world. And that is the principle of Swadharma we understood, right? Swadharma and Nishkam Dharma. So yes. So by doing prescribed duty, we purify ourselves. So that's the way of doing it. So all is done with an intention to please Krishna. That's where the word prescribed duty is. Anything we do to please Krishna becomes our prescribed duty. Anything that takes us towards Krishna, makes us progress in bhakti, is our prescribed duty. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Prabhuji, can you please explain that again? Can you move that for if I don't perform my prescribed duty? Krishna is saying if he does not perform the prescribed duty?
Yes. So if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, then, O Partha, certainly all men would follow me. So here in this section, Krishna is not representing himself as God. That's something to understand. Mm-hmm. What he's representing himself as is a leader. So as a leader, he's making a statement that as a leader, if I fail to execute my duties properly, then all men would follow my path because I'm a leader. People look up to me. That's the way to understand it. He's not talking about himself as God here. For God, there is no prescribed. Right? Yeah. For Krishna, there is no prescribed. But if we look at it from the way he's presenting himself as a leader in the human society, then whatever prescribed duties are meant for his position as a king, if he does not follow that, then other men would follow him. And that's the way to understand it. Was that clear, Maji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is 23, 24. 24, we ended 24. 25th yes, 25th is the section. So let's just do 24, then we can wrap up. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. So here Krishna is bringing out the concept of unwanted population, that what Arjun was talking about earlier. So as I've seen, that's what Krishna is doing. So, and Krishna is again, so he's kind of re-emphasizing what he said in the last verse. So Krishna has no duty, yet he acts dutifully. Okay, so Krishna as God has no duty. Krishna as a person in this living material world, he has duties to do, and then he's following the system he has set forth in the human society. So he's also following. And the reason he's following it, so that human beings have no excuse to behave in an unexemplary manner. Okay. So I mentioned about the Varna Shankara question Arjun had in the first chapter. So he was saying that if I don't, so Krishna is saying that if I don't act responsibly, others will also start acting immorally. So the job of Kshatriyas is to protect citizens, protect them from being exploited. But if Arjun doesn't fight, unrighteousness will prevail and it will lead to unwanted progeny. Okay. So if I did not perform the prescribed duties, yes. So I would be the cause of creating unwanted population and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. So in this section, Krishna is referring to himself as the king of Dwarka. Okay? So as a king, if he doesn't perform his duties properly as a householder, as a king, then everybody would follow him, and then they would also be behave immorally. Just to understand. Yeah. Anything? Okay, so I think we'll stop here. We'll do the next section. Is the next section that starts. We'll do that next week. We have a few minutes. Anybody has any questions, any thoughts, anything that I said which had a jagged end to it, you would like to talk about it?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
So I was thinking about Lord Ramachandra, and in reference to the prescribed duties, how the Lord was so exemplary to society in general, and to mankind, and so it was very exemplary. So I thought that would be a good example.
Yeah. Yes, Lord Ram is the perfect example. That's why he's called Maryada Purushottam Ram, that he was the embodiment of the Maryada, of following that rules and regulations that he had come to establish the society. When he was on exile in the Dandakaranya forest, you might already know about this. The sages in Dandakaranya forest were so attracted to Lord Ram. Lord Ram was very handsome. They were so attracted that they wanted to stay with Lord Ram, like as if like have a loving relationship with him. But there Lord Ram couldn't have that, because he was, as a king, he was a family man, so he couldn't do that. That is why then later on those sages from Dandakaranya, they were later on born as gopis in Krishna Leela, and then they could have a relationship with Krishna, a loving relationship. But as Lord Ram, he couldn't do that, because he had come to establish an exemplar lifestyle.
And Prabhuji, I wanted to ask you about the Ras Leela that you were speaking about earlier. So to the average person, how would we explain that, that those who were involved in Ras Leela, they're like you mentioned, the shadows, and that the subjects were the shadows, but how do you explain that to the average person?
Well, Prabhu, you don't explain that to an average person. All these things are not to be talked to people who don't appreciate these pastimes. It's not about.
But if someone raises this raises this question, so then what's the best way to respond?
So the best way to, well, it depends on what kind of people you're talking to, but when we hear about Krishna through our practice of bhakti and develop that attraction for him, then that conviction and that attraction ensures that we are able to cherish those pastimes. Okay. Actually in the verse, if you read the Ras Leela comes in the 10th canto, chapter number is 33. And the last verse you will be surprised to see is that it says that, what was the word? Sorry, this verse is not good. But the verse says that whoever listens to this with faith, it will increase his or her devotional attraction. So whoever listens to the Rasa Leela episode, his or her faith will increase. If we don't have these, it makes us, not understand them and get attracted to them in a lusty way. So what I'm trying to say is that only by the practice of bhakti and one can develop attraction to these and can have that conviction and attraction to understand these pastimes. You cannot explain it to somebody who's just trying to read it as a story. That's what I'm saying. There has to be some level of appreciation for these pastimes. Otherwise, it'll be practically impossible. Otherwise, what are the other reasoning I was giving? You can tell that, but if the other person doesn't have that knowledge or doesn't have that faith, doesn't have the attraction towards Krishna, he or she will never be able to.
Okay.
And they will get misdirected. They'll feel lost. They might even just give up, think, oh, I just don't understand all this. That is why we don't tell these esoteric pastimes to people who are not ready for it. It might be a disservice, actually.
Right. So it's not an intent of telling the pastimes, but the scenario is if someone asks you,
yeah,
then how do you respond? That was.
Yeah, so as I said, you can tell them that it's not easy to understand. It's something that Krishna endows upon us of understanding these pastimes. As long as we have faith, and we should be rest assured that we will have this. We'll have this realization whenever Krishna wants us to have it. So you can leave it at that point.
Right.
You don't have to explain it to everybody.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
It's not for everybody to grasp. Not everybody's at that level of devotional maturity.
Correct.
Prabhuji, what was the reasoning behind Lord Krishna stealing the dresses of the gopis when they were taking the bath? It was also demonstrating topmost spirituality. Means what was the reason for that pastime?
So all these pastimes have the same principle which I just mentioned. It's all coming from a point of love. All those gopis, they had prayed to Katyayani that may Krishna be our husband. So Krishna was just fulfilling their desires. And once again, it might all seem very lusty and very cheap, but they all have an ulterior meaning, is that it's all based on love. And for love, when it comes to love, all the morals and principles, they go away. That's the topmost spirituality. That is why a devotee, when he does something for Krishna, he's no more bound by the morals of this material world. Because I don't have that developed mentality, I try to see Krishna's pastime through my lusty eyes. And then I feel, oh, why is Krishna doing this? This is so weird. Because I don't have that vision. But for a pure devotee, he or she can see that it's all based on love. So the reasoning being that they all wanted Krishna as their husband and Krishna was fulfilling their wishes. That's all he was doing. But there are multiple other layers to it, which to those, but I think that would suffice when you understand that it's all based on love.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah.
So the last verse I was mentioning, okay, now Viprinitam Vrajavadubhi Ridam Cha Vishnu. So Krishna, they say that in the last verse of the 10th canto, 33rd chapter, the last verse is 39. It said that when you hear with faith these pastimes, that will lead to devotional attraction and philosophical conviction. But because I don't have faith, these things, these kind of pastimes eventually make me feel as if this is lusty, this is not appropriate, this is immoral on Krishna's part. Or why do you pray to a god who steals gopis' dresses, or who steals butter, or who does Ras Leela? That is all because my vision is still clouded, extremely clouded by ignorance. That is the way. That's why. So we should read that verse, 10th canto, 33rd chapter, verse number 39. That's what it explains. It's not a purport by Prabhupada, it's one of Prabhupada's disciples, but still worth reading. Okay. We are at 4 minutes past 8:30, so we'll wrap up and we'll continue. And please feel free to text me, to send me a message if you have questions. I'm happy to discuss this offline. Unfortunately, within this 1.5 hour time limit, we cannot discuss everything that is worth discussing. So if you feel like, I'm happy to discuss it with you separately also. So I'm here for that. So please let me know. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.